let's talk. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Ahmad. Oops. Yep. I'm a developer. I'm a hacker. I do a lot of open source projects, and I'm a dog lover. And full disclosure, I'm on the board of Full Stack Toronto as an advisory board. So if you have any issues or anything about the conference or feedback, let us know. Just contributing to this project as well. I usually try to find a good pivot to why I put a picture of my dog on the screen, but I don't know. I just couldn't find anything. But this is my dog, Ruby, not associated with the programming language. I just want to share. I love my dog. Dogs are awesome. And yeah, I do a lot of projects. Like I said, I do a lot of open source projects. I contribute to a number of meetups groups in the city, as well as initiatives that we do, like Node School Toronto, for example, is happening, I think, in a week. And Tech Masters is the Slack channel that you guys are probably joined on the Slack group that Full Stack Toronto is on. And there's a few other things that I do as well. Please feel free to check them out. Moving on. Let me give you a little bit of a backstory. So I worked in a number of companies over the years, and either as a developer or a team lead, or led development of projects and products. And usually there are the kind of the project management and the tooling and the things that happen around the project. And as a developer, you just get sucked into it, and you don't really see the bigger picture of what's happening around you in terms of the business side of things, why certain decisions happen in certain ways. And a lot of time it becomes frustrating. So as I started growing and started doing more projects, I wanted to learn more about what the business needs are and why certain decisions are made in certain ways. And the result of that ended up being a scenario where I would be talking to my project manager, or I'd be talking to my boss, and they just say, just do it. You don't need to worry about how things are done or why things are done or what decisions led to this. Just go ahead and do it. Just do your job. You're the developer. Focus on that. And I'm sure some of you guys probably feel that, maybe not in all cases, especially difference between startups and enterprises or big corporations. That conversation might go differently. So as I grew through my career, when I'm going to interviews and talking to people, some of the, and this is where, some of the companies that I worked for, which I'm not going to mention, there, you end up in this weird conversation where like the directors or the VPs or the department leads, they end up kind of wanting to hire people to be the middleware between the developers or the doers and the people who are actually leading the company or leading the business. And that's usually where I ended up falling. I ended up falling in that gap between the development groups and the technologists and the managers. And they used to actually tell me that, oh, you have that great skill of being able to talk the business talk and talk the development and technology talk. So like, great, you can come in and just take care of the developers and just talk to them, because we don't understand how to talk to developers or how to approach developers or technologists in general, including designers and product people. And I used to think that was a good skill. I used to think that was something that I should be proud of, to put on my resume. It's like, yeah, I can understand the business needs. I can talk about business needs and objectives and goals and financials, and I can dive deep into the technology and actually write the software and write the code. And I used to be proud of that. But as I realized that working with other companies, startups, and more product-focused companies, that's not always the case. And the reality of the situation is, when you have a smaller team, when you have a more focused company that's focusing on building a single product or a single solution, the development team is part of the decision-making, and it's part of the DNA of the company. So it ended up being the reverse effect, where I finally realized that when I was in these jobs, in these positions where I was the development manager or the director or the IT lead or something like that, and my boss tells me, yeah, I don't want to deal with the developers. You need to take care of the developers. You just speak their language and just come back and report to me. That's not a skill that I have or something that I'm actually adding value in. It's actually the reverse. It's their inability to understand what motivates developers, what motivates creative people, and what motivates individuals like us in this technology space. So let's start me on this line of thinking of like, okay, who are we? How do we express ourselves better? How do we share what motivates us and allow businesses as well as other people around us to understand who we are? If you look at the media, we have certain kind of single stereotype of nerds or people in the technology space that we end up being kind of portrayed as. in either kind of the comedic way of nerds being weird and single personas that they followed different characters, or in this kind of overhyped startup world that we live in of being, all about focusing about building this massive, crazy, amazing technology and making millions of dollars and just living the Silicon Valley lifestyle. But the reality is and of course there's the negative aspects of it too, that's also being portrayed in the media and or in the news that you hear about a lot of, for example, the programmer or like the lack of diversity that we have in our culture. But the reality is there's a big variety of personalities and mixes of people and interests and motivations, and really what we do is a creative aspect. What we do is like art. So it's only fair to expect that people have different personalities and they have different motivations in the space that we're in. And of course, when we talk to our families or people from older generations and try to explain to them what we do, it's like, yeah, I kind of spend time on the computer writing words on a screen, and then it makes other words appear and shapes and stuff happen. It's really hard to articulate what you're doing. And I don't know if you guys have had that kind of conversation with somebody who's completely non-technical from a different generation, perhaps. I'd like to hear from you guys. This is not just me projecting. I want to kind of hear back from you. Has anybody ever had to explain how computers work to your grandmother or somebody who's not familiar with that? How did it go? What do you usually say?
Try to simplify it. Sometimes you can't get into how it's working and how the software works.
So you try to simplify it. You try to find metaphors and analogies. And do you find yourself successful in kind of explaining what this thing is that you're working with?
Usually ends in like a, okay.
Exactly, right? Like you end up with like, oh, okay, fine, cool story, bro, and just move on, right? But even more frustrating is explaining what motivates us to do that work. Because if you look at it from the outside view, if you kind of take off your shoes and go sit in somebody else's shoes that are completely removed from the technology space that we're in, the way they perceive not just programmers and developers, but designs and creative kind of skills that we have in the industry, they perceive us as people who just sit in front of the computer all day long and just stare at this monitor just to make some web page or some mobile app. To them, that is not, they don't see the depth that goes into the effort of the creation of this mobile app. For them, it's just like a Facebook button that you press, or like an Uber that you call on your phone. They don't necessarily understand the complexity of the technology within it. And furthermore, they can't really see what motivates us as individuals to why we would want to spend that much time and actually invest a lot of our livelihood in just creating that. So if we talk to each other, we understand each other. We can easily kind of bridge that gap, whether you're talking between a developer and a designer, or an IT system architect versus a coder on the front end. We can bridge that gap. We can appreciate each other and understand what motivates us. But we seem to have that kind of disconnect between ourselves and our families and kind of explaining exactly what motivates us there. Like I have this issue with my wife. It's not really an issue, just she doesn't quite understand that I actually enjoy staying up late till 3 a.m. on the computer hacking away at something. She's like, it doesn't make sense to me. Why don't you go out? Why don't you spend time on the TV or something? I mean, I do that as well, but I find more enjoyment in actually the creation of programs and software. And even worse, in the workplace, when you talk to our bosses and our managers and people who we work with day to day, if you do the math, we actually spend more time at work than we spend at home. Those people don't necessarily even appreciate or understand our motivations either. So I chose the word hacker for a reason. And I know that there's some negative kind of understanding of the word hacker in the industry, but I'm sure you guys can agree to this. And there's the hacker culture kind of term that's been used for years of, this is actually back in the 50s too. Like it's just the subculture of individuals that enjoy the intellectual challenges and the creation of new products and new services and just changing the world around us. The reality is that's what we do. We just want to change the world. And we want to change it through technology. And I don't have to tell you this. You're already in it. You're already doing this. But generally speaking, when we talk to people around us, they don't necessarily appreciate or understand that scope of what goes into it. So why is this important? Why do we have to answer that question? Why do we have to explain to people around us our motivation? So there was a survey that was done in 2014 or actually it was done in late 2013, about predicting in that 2014 there would be 29 million information communication technology skilled workers in the world. Out of those 29 millions, 11 million of those would be professional developers. So just to clarify the terms, the ICT skilled workers, they mean anybody and everybody who works around tech, whether it's like the pure IT or communication or software development. They primarily focus on software development. And when they say 11 million professional developers, that's just the distinction between people who actually do that as a job versus people who do that as a hobby and or part-time, contributing to open source projects or building their own projects. So that's a massive number, 30 million people around the world. Now it's only in 2014. We're about to hit 2016 now, so you can imagine that number is growing. This graph actually shows you the diversity within that group as well. When you're talking about the professional software developers, i.e. people who actually do this as a job full-time, and then the skilled professionals around that as well, and the hobbyists. And the reality is there's a lot of hobbyists out there. It's almost as many as professionals. People who do that full-time and people who do that on the side. That includes students who probably are still studying, so technically they don't count as professionals. But it also includes people who are perhaps working as a barista in a coffee shop, but goes home and writes open source projects. Or perhaps they do some teaching in school or whatever, and then they still contribute back to the open source community or to a project of their own. So you might think that the majority of those numbers are actually in North America or Europe, but the reality is not. It's actually widespread. It's almost equally spread around the world. And that's actually pretty interesting, to me at least, because if you think of, if you want to label it as third world countries, if you think of those places, you wouldn't imagine there would be as big of a penetration of technology as there is. And the reality is, it's actually a lot. It's almost bigger than Europe alone. So going back to our day-to-day life, this is important because our bosses and the people we work with, they don't necessarily appreciate what motivates us or what we want, why we're doing what we're doing. And why that matters to us is because when you talk to a boss or you talk to a CEO and you tell them, for example, you're not happy or you want to do more or you're not satisfied with your work, usually what their typical response is going to be, oh, here's a bonus, or here's some vacation time, or maybe we'll just put you on a new team, or give you a new title. Right? I don't know about you guys, but to me, titles mean nothing, or at least mean very little. I'm not doing what I'm doing because of the money. I didn't choose to be an engineer so I can get paid more money than other people or less money or so on. I chose this profession because I enjoy the aspect of creating products and creating services and creating things out of nothing. And I'm sure to varying degrees that applies to a lot of people as well. Do you guys have a different answer to that question? Like, why did you choose the profession of being in the technology sector? Whether you're a designer, an engineer, a developer. Anybody?
I like the mobility because I can pretty much work in almost any country.
There you go.
English is the lingua franca.
Yeah. So vacation means nothing to you then. It doesn't matter.
And I can go to conferences like this one.
Right. Anybody else? How many developers in the room? How many designers or creative aspect? Cool. Yeah, it could be both. How many project managers or product managers? Nobody? Okay, we can talk badly about that. So this is the project. So that's kind of the backstory, the reason why we're doing all this. So what I'm starting to do now is, and I've actually been doing this for a while, as part of doing conferences and events and part of my work traveling to see clients and so on. I carry around a little GoPro camera with a nice spotlight and everything and microphone, boom. And whenever I meet people like you or people that I'm working with or my clients or developers too, I just sit down and say, let's chat. And instead of talking about technologies or frameworks or, as many of these YouTube videos that you've seen out there of people talking about their choices of tech or some of these talks that we're doing here at conferences, I want to talk about people as individuals, people as persons, and what motivates them and why they're doing what they're doing. And why did you choose to be a developer? Why did you choose to be a designer? What was the motivation for you to learn Objective-C instead of Java? And why do you enjoy sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours a day? And those kind of questions that we can ask each other and understand it, and sometimes we joke about it and converse about it in our own conversations. But those things are not exposed to people outside of our circles, outside of our technology space. So I've been doing this for a while. I actually have a number of episodes already recorded. Today I'm actually announcing the project and launching it. So I was just doing the website just a few minutes before the talk. So the website is hacker.bio, and I want you guys to take the survey to help me as well kind of refine those questions and understand a little bit more about what motivates you, what kind of different things that got you into this. So the survey is up on the website as well. And I also want your support and feedback. So I've actually launched a Patreon campaign. I'll just do this. Nope. Support. So the Patreon campaign, and again, I want your feedback on if you guys think this makes sense or not. The Patreon campaign allows for people to support the creation of the episodes. So like I said, I already have like a 20, 30 episode backlog that I'm actually, I have an editor that's working with me on them to create like an episode format. And actually I was going to be demoing like the intro episode today, but as with editors, things were a bit late. So I never actually got to do that. But the goal is to actually just continue doing this and hopefully just do more Skype interviews, more sit down with you guys here as well and actually do this kind of conversation. And the end goal is very simple. The end goal is just to have these kind of conversation that we can share with our coworkers, that we can share with our colleagues who may not be as kind of focused on technology as we are, like sales and marketing and people in different aspects of our jobs, and share with our families too, and kind of tell that story of we are a creative profession. We work in a creative profession. We are creative people. We enjoy what we're doing because we want to change the world. And everybody has a different story to tell, and everybody has a different way of the way they might want to change the world. So I'm going to cut it short because I didn't have the video ready today, and I've been kind of having words with my editor about it. But that's also part of the reason that I need the support, because it's hard to find video editors and people who can help you with a project before you launch it and kind of pitch them the idea to help. So if you guys want to support the project and help me kind of get it out there, hopefully I'm going to be releasing the first episode or the first couple of episodes next week as opposed to today. And I want to continue doing that on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis where I release some of the episodes that I have in the backlog. And then going forward, I also want to talk to you guys. So if you guys are available after the conference or in the next week or so, I don't know who's visiting, who's going to be in Toronto or not, love to talk to you about it, love to sit down and have that conversation and collect that information and then share that story with the rest of the world. Cool. Thank you, guys.